Alright, I know I'm hella late to this, but seeing Battlefront 2 blow up again just warms my heart. I remember playing this game at launch and being just as disappointed as everyone else was with the microtransaction situation, but now seeing it become my dream Star Wars game, it is just so cathartic, especially considering the long journey this game had to become what it is today. And with this influx of attention towards the game, there is a lot of clamor about the potential for a Battlefront 3. Now this sounds exciting, but a question popped into my head. Do we actually need a Battlefront 3? Now, I know some of you are already getting your pitchforks ready, but let me propose another question to see where I'm coming from. What is missing from Battlefront 2 that can only be added from a new game? It's no secret that Battlefront 2 is a fantastic game and is full of content. A sequel would need to be gargantuan in order to live up to the hype that Battlefront 2 delivers. What could they possibly add? What are the flaws of Battlefront 2, and how can a new game rectify those flaws? Well, in this video, I want to talk about just that. I want to take a look back at Battlefront 2 and see what can be improved upon in a potential sequel, as well as what should be kept the same. And to start off this video, I want to address the worst part of Battlefront 2, and it's something that people barely talk about, and that is the campaign. Before the game's release, I thought the campaign had a lot of promise. You play as a leader of an elite Imperial squad named Iden Versio as she deals with the fallout of the destruction of the second Death Star. Now this sounds cool until not even halfway through the campaign, you guessed it, they turn good and join the rebellion. Lame. Like really, it took you this long to realize the Empire is evil? In fact, they're comically evil in this campaign. They just randomly decide to glass a planet loyal to the Empire because it will spread fear throughout the galaxy. But why do it to a planet loyal to the Empire? Why not a planet that's, not loyal to the Empire? But whatever, the story is just bland. There's nothing special about it. None of the characters are particularly interesting and the plot is so formulaic and predictable. It's not terrible per se, but it's utterly forgettable, which makes it worse in my opinion. It's a shame since the original Battlefront 2's campaign was a lot better and more interesting than this one's. The monologues alone put everything in modern Battlefront 2 to shame. So when it comes to a Battlefront 3, I think a solid campaign would be much appreciated. Now what should this campaign look like? Well, here's where the fun begins, because theoretically they could do whatever the hell they want. They could choose any setting or any story as long as it fits with the Star Wars canon. Now if I were personally in charge of making the campaign, I'd probably do something like the war stories from Battlefield 1. Little mini stories across the 3 settings so that we encompass all that the franchise has to offer. Maybe we could do one for each faction, this way you can still experiment and do a wide variety of things. However, that's just one suggestion, and they can realistically do whatever they want. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about what everyone actually cares about, and that is multiplayer. Right off the bat, if there's one thing that I really want to see get a makeover, it's gotta be the game modes. Currently in Battlefront 2, there is Supremacy, there's Galactic Assault, there's Heroes vs Villains, and everything else is basically irrelevant. Not many people play the other modes, so for infantry game modes, everyone is funneled into playing either Galactic Assault or Supremacy. I mean, they are the 2 best game modes in the game, so I'm not complaining, but I feel like if Battlefront 3 was going to happen, there needs to be something big, a new game mode that would be the selling point of the game. Now, what could be big enough to fulfill this request? Well, I think I have just the idea, and it comes from the original Battlefront 3. Way back when, there was a planned Battlefront 3, but it was ultimately cancelled for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to get into right now. One of the things that was planned was a seamless transition from land to space combat, and I think this would be a huge selling point for a modern Battlefront 3. Now, this is a wild idea. Even with hardware today, it would probably be a challenge to get this going. Remember, this game needs something big to justify its existence, and come on, having matches with both land and space battles would be awesome. I think the best way to go about this is by having objectives in both land and space. Maybe on the ground it would be something like Supremacy, but in space you would be targeting and destroying a capital ship, similar to what we have in the original Battlefront 2. Speaking of the OG Battlefront 2, maybe you can board the enemy ship and okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But the point is, I think there's a lot you can take from the older Battlefront games, including 2015. Even if you can't pull off seamless land and space battles, I personally love the game modes from the DLCs that transition from space battles to land battles or vice versa. Maps like the Death Star or Scarab from Battlefront 1 were so cool, and I'd love to see something similar return in the 3rd installment. But I do think that Battlefront 3 should have some smaller but more unique game modes similar to something like Ewok Hunt from Battlefront 2. I've heard of Order 66 game mode being thrown around, and I personally love the idea and think it sounds absolutely amazing. But just smaller game modes like this would add so much more variety to the gameplay. Speaking of gameplay, let's take a closer look at the core gameplay elements and see what can be changed. Battlefront 2 introduces a class system, only with 4 classes, and I personally think they are all perfect except for one of them. In my opinion, I think the Specialist class, aka the Sniper class, is pretty underwhelming when underleveled. For context, I used to play on console but switched to PC on a fresh account. In preparation for this video, I decided to unlock all the weapons on all classes, and the Specialist class was the one I dreaded the most. Mainly because you don't unlock an actual sniper until you get 400 kills with the class. At first, I hated the base blaster for the Specialist, as it's basically just a shitty DMR. And it got a little better with the IQA11, but not that much. But shockingly, the A280 CFE was actually really good. Especially after you get the burst fire mod, it just melts people at mid to close range. However, I can't call it a sniper, it's more of an assault rifle randomly given to the sniper class. So I still have that sniper itch that needed scratching. But finally, we get the NT242, an actual sniper that one-shot headshots, and all is well in the world.
I shouldn't even gotten out of bed.
We somehow still lost. So long story short, in the next game, please let the sniper class have some more snipers. Besides the NT242, the rest of the guns barely fit the role of a long-range sniper. Mainly they're more like mid-range DMRs, with the A280 CFE actually doing surprisingly well at close range. Well, there is the cycler rifle, which...
it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
But in most games, there just isn't much variety in the specialist class because almost everyone is running the NT242. But to be honest, I think there needs to be more weapons in general. While I think the other classes have a fairly solid selection of weapons, each class only has 4, which gives us a grand total of 16 weapons. For context, Battlefront 2015 had over 20, and in my opinion, they were much more unique than what we have in Battlefront 2. In fact, in 2015, there were some really cool weapons like the bow rifle for instance, or the A180 that could switch into multiple different weapons. Having that kind of variety while also having the class system would be absolutely amazing. But Battlefront 2 is far from bad, as it also introduces some amazing mechanics of its own. They somehow went from the worst idea ever with the token system to the best idea ever with the battle point system in the sequel. Basically, the better you do, the more points you earn, allowing you to spawn vehicles, reinforcements, and heroes. This system not only rewards players for doing well, but also gives each player a chance to play the reinforcements and the heroes. As long as you are somewhat competent, you surely will get enough battle points for whatever you want, given that it isn't at max player count. It's such a good system and I think it should be kept in this hypothetical Battlefront 3. Now of course, I think it could always be expanded upon. We could always use some new reinforcements. The current ones are great already, but as they say, the more the merrier. I'll go over a potential one for each faction. For the Republic, this one was quite tricky as they've already done most of the good ones, but I'm gonna go with the Flame Trooper as we see them in the Clone Wars TV show. For the Separatists, I think Magna Guards are really badass and would love to see them on the Battlefront too. For the Empire, after watching Andor, I think the security droids could be a force to be reckoned with. For the Rebels, you could honestly make something up, but I want to go with the Boss and Spy as they are directly mentioned in Return of the Jedi. They don't have to be like their original counterpart in the OG Battlefront, but whatever floats their boat. And finally for the sequel era, we could do the Praetorian Guards, I guess. And for the Resistance... yeah, I got nothing. But enough with the reinforcements, y'all want to talk about some heroes, yeah. And when it comes to the Republic era, oh boy are there so many cool heroes we could do. We got Ahsoka, Cad Bane, Mace Windu, Asajj Ventress, Captain Rex, and basically every Jedi in the galaxy could be a hero. Now we move on to the Rebellion era, and not much is happening here. We already have the main cast of characters, so I really don't know who else would be cool. I guess you could make a case for Cassian Andor maybe, but I don't know, he's not as hype as someone like Ahsoka. Don't get me wrong, Andor is undoubtedly some of the best Star Wars media ever, but Andor himself isn't exactly the type of character you'd imagine charging the front lines and terrorizing the battlefront. Then again, in the last game, we got 9 Numb as a hero, so I guess anything is possible. But speaking of the last game, we could always get Dengar and Greedo again if they're really desperate. And finally, for the Resistance era, you know what, I'm just gonna be honest, no one gives a fuck. They already gave up when they added BB-8 and BB-9E. I really don't know what content of the Resistance era could get in general, but let's be honest, it's not why we're really here. Okay, I guess we haven't gotten Poe Dameron yet, so that could be a Resistance hero. And as for the villain, we could probably find some glup shithead to stand in, I don't know. But alright, we have the options for who we can play as. Let's dive deeper into the actual gameplay of Battlefront 2, and this is where the glazing shall begin. Because by golly does this game have some of the best mechanics for a third/first person shooter Star Wars has ever seen. The gunplay feels crunchy and satisfying with every class. The mobility is perfectly tuned, not too much but not too little to feel sluggish, and each class perfectly complements the other. Assault is fast paced and aggressive. Heavy is your standard heavy weapons guide with a big health bar and even bigger guns. The officer class gives a nice boost to your allies, and while the specialist class at the beginning may not be the best at its job, once you unlock better weapons, it becomes a great long range option. Every class is great and each offers a different playstyle. Even if you do somehow get bored with these 4 classes, once you get the reinforcements in there, and oh my god, the variety! Each one has a unique playstyle. Playing as each faction offers a different experience, as the reinforcements for every faction are so different. It makes every game feel unique as you're given new options for reinforcements and heroes with each era. Although I will say that the reinforcements for the Rebels really got the short end of the stick. I mean, come on, an Ewok? The rest are really underpowered, with the Wookiee being mediocre, and the Jump Trooper, while good in the right hands, is also not exactly groundbreaking stuff, as the other factions have arguably better versions of the Jump Trooper. I get that there aren't many options in canon Star Wars they could use, but I think what makes Rebels unique is that they could be from anywhere and look like anyone. As shown in Andor and Rebels, there are so many different sects of Rebels that spawn from anywhere, so I wish they got more creative and created a new trooper of some kind, something they could at least rival with what the Empire has. But anyway, getting back on track, when it comes to variety, there is surely enough to keep anyone from getting bored. But eventually with enough battle points, you unlock the heroes, and this is where I'll be honest, I probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Because alright, I'll admit it, I suck at the heroes in this game. Every time I get one, I get a few kills and immediately die. It's pretty embarrassing. Occasionally I can go off and get those high kill streaks, but most of the time it's a sad and pitiful life that barely sees any action. But of course, if the opportunity presents itself, you bet your sweet bippy I'm choosing to play as Obi-Wan Kenobi. But despite my ineptitude, I think that the balancing for the heroes is really well designed. They aren't invincible tanks that can just mow down enemies without a thought. You actually have to be strategic with them and choose your fights wisely. Because trust me, your health can be gone in the blink of an eye if you aren't careful. But the only way to regain lost health is by getting killed. This encourages you to stay aggressive and continue hunting even when you're low on health. If you are good with them, unlike me, you are an absolute menace on the battlefront and a terrifying one at that. There are definitely some heroes that are better than others, but I feel each one is viable in their own unique way and a massive threat if used properly. Now of course, if you want more hero action, you could always play heroes versus villains, which I'll also be honest, is just not my thing. Personally, I find the lightsaber combat to be janky and unintuitive. It could be because I just suck at it, or it could be because I'm underleveled compared to everyone else, but it just never clicked with me. I know a lot of people like it, so I won't comment on it much. It should definitely return in Battlefront 3, and I know it's hard to make a lightsaber system that works for both an FPS and for duels, and I think Battlefront 2 did the best they could. But still, I just don't find it very enjoyable, so I'll leave it to others to decide what to do with it. Overall, I really can't think of any ways to improve upon the core gameplay of this game. It's just so structurally sound that there aren't any glaring issues that arise that need to be addressed. I don't know how a Battlefront 3 could improve upon this gameplay because I genuinely think it's already as good as it can get. But who knows, maybe DICE can cook up something even better than this, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now I quickly want to talk about the maps in this game. I think Battlefront 2 has a good selection of maps, with each one being pretty solid in my opinion. There isn't one I particularly hate. Of course we could get a few others like Coruscant, Mustafar, Megiddo, etc. But what I really want to talk about is introducing more dynamic maps, similar to the Levolution we see in Battlefield games. Since it is DICE, they have the resources to introduce these systems into Battlefront. Maybe certain buildings can be destroyed, or maybe the map changes in some other ways, changing certain paths and sightlines. There are so many possibilities with this, and honestly you just have to look at Battlefield for examples. Battlefront has always been at least inspired by Battlefield, so it would honestly fit in so nicely. I'm sure some of you guys are waiting for some examples, but I'm a little stupid and can't think of any. So instead I'll let you guys run wild in the comments with potential ideas for a dynamical evolution style event in Battlefront. But changing course, let's talk about the progression system, as this was a heavily controversial topic at the beginning of the game's lifecycle, with the dreaded loot box system. But now that the loot boxes have been sorted out, we are left with the star card system. By leveling up, you get skill points that you can use to unlock new star cards. Star cards gives buffs to your character, as well as upgrading or replacing your utility. It's a nice system that gives players options in developing their own unique playstyle. For example, on Heavy, I routinely switch out the shield for the barrage, which gives me a cheeky little grenade launcher that is solid in choke points. But here's the thing, star cards gives quite a substantial advantage to veteran players, as they will have maxed out star cards compared to newer players who don't. But in all honesty, it isn't too much of a grind to get to level 30 where you can practically unlock any star card you want, so for trooper gameplay, it isn't that bad. But what is a bit of an issue is when it comes to reinforcements and especially heroes. Because they cost battle points, you're not spending nearly as much time playing as them, thus progression with these characters is much slower. This is especially a problem when it comes to heroes. Some star cards are absolute musts for heroes, and without them, you are severely underpowered, especially if you're going up against other veteran heroes who will absolutely demolish you. But fear not, as this game does provide a solution, which is the co-op missions. Co-op missions allow you to play against bots and are a great way to grind for star cards and weapons for any class, reinforcement, or hero. So while the progression system does heavily favor veteran players, the game does give newer players the tools to catch up. Ultimately, while it isn't perfect, I do think the star card system can make a return in Battlefront 3. It may see some changes, maybe newer players can be given a list of preset star card loadouts to choose from so they aren't so underpowered. Or maybe there could just be more star cards in general. But overall, I think it's a good system and I don't see much reason to change it. And finally, I think that the customization could use a bit of work. Don't get me wrong, for the clones it's awesome, so many options for both Phase 1 and Phase 2 troopers. But when it comes to other factions, it's pretty bad. I'm especially disappointed in the Rebel and Resistance choices. They feel so restrictive, only giving you a few options for each class. Why can't I have any alien species on any class? I think a revamped customization system could be wonderful and open up player expression in a great way, especially for the Rebels and Resistance. There are tons of different designs for the Rebels, so maybe we can mix and match them to however we see fit. Or maybe we can design our own unique Rebel soldier. Like I said, Rebels can look like anyone, so some more customization options would fit that theme. All in all, the clones can't hog all the good customization options. Let the other factions have some too. But before I end this video, there's just one last thing I gotta mention or else people would drill me for not doing so. And that is Galactic Conquest, baby. Now if you don't know what Galactic Conquest is, basically it's a game mode where you and a bot take turns controlling fleets of capitalist ships and deciding where they move across the galaxy. If you move your fleet onto an enemy planet, you commence an invasion of said planet, with victory meaning you take control of the planet, and defeat meaning the destruction of your fleet. Moving to a planet with an enemy fleet results in a space battle. By winning both ground and space battles, you gain credits that can be used to buy new units and upgrades. Victory is achieved by securing every planet in the galaxy. It's that sense of strategy mixed with the large-scale battles Battlefront offers, and it's no secret why fans have been wanting this mode to make a return in modern titles. Personally, I love this mode and wouldn't mind seeing it coming back. Although I don't think we'll be seeing it making its grand return. This is mainly a single player mode, which is not as enticing for developers. Well, I guess it can be 2-player. It could play out like a really long chess match where one player makes their move whether or not the other player is online. Once the other player is online, they can make their move and it goes on like that. That would be cool, but could also just be really slow. So I don't know. If any of you have any ideas on how to make this work for multiplayer, then let me know. But the real reason I feel it won't make a return is the fact that it takes away resources that could be used for other stuff. Put it this way. Would you rather have more maps, heroes, reinforcements, and just general content in the other modes, or sacrifice some of that in exchange for Galactic Conquest? Some of you might, but I don't think DICE is willing to make that sacrifice. So ultimately, I propose a question once again. Do we really need a Battlefront 3? And to be honest, I think there's a lot we could add, but at the same time, there's already a lot that is really good in Battlefront 2. A lot of what I'm suggesting is a pipe dream. Ground to space combat and dynamic maps, while cool, would take a long time to develop, and in that time, who knows where the hype for Battlefront 3 will be. On the other hand, while hype for Battlefront 2 is slowly dwindling, the player base remains healthy and the game in general is just amazing. Despite the overwhelming cries for Battlefront 3, there is a vocal part of the community that would rather have Battlefront 2 just updated. And for me, it makes more sense this way, because if you look at the grand scheme of things, Battlefront 3 is very unlikely to happen. EA's exclusivity deal for Star Wars has ended, meaning that the next developer for Battlefront 3 could be up for grabs. However, I don't see anyone nearly as qualified as DICE is for Battlefront. They have both the experience and the resources to make a game like Battlefront 3. I heard some crazy ideas thrown around like Arrowhead, which come on, you really think a smaller studio like them, which is already stumped with Helldivers, would be able to take on Battlefront 3? But unfortunately, I don't see DICE getting their shot at Battlefront 3 anytime soon. They're already hard at work on the next Battlefield game, and EA said they are moving away from licensed works to work on their own IPs. So unfortunately, a Battlefront 3 from DICE is unlikely given the circumstances, so maybe the next best alternative is to update Battlefront 2. We could always use more heroes, maps, modes, reinforcements, etc. Those don't have to involve a new game, right? Well, there are some difficulties with that as well. According to a Reddit post from one of the former developers of Battlefront 2, they stated there are many problems with a potential big update. Our hero selection is running out of space. Our allowed size on PlayStation is hitting a limit. We had to waiver it the last few patches. Refactoring was requested. The front-end system is deprecated, is locked in the current form, a back-end engineer at EA Central would have to resume it somehow, and finally, our matchmaking system is running at the high end on maps and modes. Adding more to rotation is not a great idea. So it seems Battlefront 2 is nearing its limits and a new update might prove challenging. Some including the developer have suggested a remake/remaster of Battlefront 2. This may seem fine at first until you realize that it may be an excuse for EA to resell us the same game just for continued updates, something they are notorious for doing in other franchises. When we look at the big picture here, the future of Battlefront seems uncertain. A third installment is already seeing some difficulty, and Battlefront 2 seems like it's run its course with its updates. So what do we do? Well, at the very least, we can keep playing. Keep playing Battlefront 2 and show people that we still care about this franchise and want to see it continue. Maybe, just maybe, someone is listening and we can finally get our Battlefront 3. But for now, all we can do is hope. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified of every upload, and I will catch you another time.